not have what is the mashhur of the madhab. Later on, we do have this regulation which starts to appear, yet there is huge diversity amongst these people who are regulating the madhab. And this continues till later on. So the question we have to ask ourselves, well, what is the mashhur of the madhab? Because we know centuries later, okay, Khalil in his Mukhtasar, which he is doing a Mukhtasar of the Mudawwana, is trying to present the mashhur of the madhab. And he says in the beginning that he is basing it upon the understanding interpretations of the four ulama, major ulama, Ibn Rushd, Ibn Yunus, Al-Lakhmi and Al-Mazari. And yet we'll see there is great differences amongst these ulama. So I mean, when we're trying to say, if we say the mashhur of the madhab is the transmission of Ibn Qasim in the Mudawwana, I mean, a typical mas'ala will be Ibn Qasim refuses to accept al-jama' bayn as-salatain in its haqiqi manner, in its realistic manner. He seems to take a more Kufic understanding, that which is in line with the Hanafi madhab almost. Yet the Maliki madhab disagrees with him on that. We see the transmission of the Mudawwanatul Kubra, of the Mudawwana, as is also the view of Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, that an-najasa, that impurities, if they fall in a small quantity of water, that they impact that water. That water should not be used. Whereas Khalil in his Mukhtasar will seem to present the view of the Madaniyin, of the Madani students, turning away from the Misriyin, who were apparently the most relied upon within the madhab. And so and we have several other issues where we're going to see a huge amount of disparity. And if we're going with, as I said, the third opinion of the mashhur of the madhab is that which has the most, which is more democratically supported within the madhab, which has the most number of people supporting it, then who are these people? Are they the students of Imam Malik, I ask? Because if they're the students, then, for example, Sadal, which is placing the arms at the side, is outnumbered in terms of transmission by the other students, by Ashhab, by Ibn Nafi', by Ibn Abd al-Hakam, by Ibn Wahab. They all seem to present the riwayah of the qabd. If we're talking about Raf al-Yadayn in Salah, once again Ibn Qasim is outnumbered, if we're speaking democratically. If we're saying no, well, we're going to extend the democratic opinion to the later muhaqqiqeen, then I ask, okay, and we say there must be more than three. Fair enough. This is a muhaddith type of influence on this opinion, which is good, because the muhaddithin say a mashhur hadith is that which at least three people or more have transmitted. But coming back to the topic, then what about, when we still have conflicting transmissions from the muhaqqiqeen? So sometimes, for example, Qadi Iyad will present, who is one of the muhaqqiqeen of the madhab, he will say that doing Raf' al-Yadayn is, for example, the mashhur of the madhab, is amongst the mashhur of the madhab. And we will have Ibn Rushd saying another thing. When we're looking at the fara'id of wudu, for example, we know that, for example, Ibn Shas, and we have people like Ibn Yunus who only present 6 fara'id within a wudu. And they do not mention dalk. Although Khalil presents 7 and he presents dalk, and we have Ibn Rushd al-Jadd, who's one of the muhaqqiqeen, who presents them as 8. He says there are 8 fara'id in wudu, and he still doesn't mention dalk, but he mentions tartib, although he later on goes on to question some of the angles of it. But yet, so whose transmission and whose understanding are we going by? And if we're going to say, well, later on we know that Khalil has said, although Khalil within his Mukhtasar has differences, but yet Al-Qutb Dardir in his Aqrab al-Masalik, we know that he's kind of further refined this. Then Sheikh Allama Al-Qutb Dardir ala Ra's wal Ayn, he's a great scholar, but are we trying to say his understanding of the madhab, or what he presents as must be the mashhur of the madhab, it outweighs the likes and the understandings of people like Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, who was known as Young Malik, or Qadi Iyad, or Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi, or Ibn Abd al-Barr, for example, who says on certain things like the meat of predatory animals, he says that the madhab of Imam Malik, presenting it as the mashhur, is what is in the Muwatta. So we've got whose interpretation do we take on what the Mashour actually, A, what does it actually mean, and two, which opinion is that Mashour opinion? And here I'm not saying it's wrong to be taken. I'm in fact encouraging people to say, yes, go by the Mashour. But are we obliged to follow the Mashour? I do not believe so. The madhab of Imam Malik, the madhab of the people of Medina, is a majestic madhab which is extremely encompassing and it is very vast. So, I mean, we see all this diversity. There is a lot of ikhtilaf, and people will present opinions sometimes. They will say, well, the likes of Imam Mazari, who's known as Imam within the madhab, a legendary Imam within the madhab of Imam Malik, he never ever gave a fatwa contrary to the Mashour. And some people will transmit this about him. I mean, first of all, I will say, well, firstly, I mean, the fact that somebody's transmitting that, and they were the early scholars, shows for it to be a unique thing, it must have meant that many other people were giving fatwa contrary to the Mashour. Secondly, I will say that if we are saying Mazari has never actually gone against the Mashour, then I mean, if you just need to take a look at some of his opinions. I mean, if we look at the Dhakhira, just look at the Mas'ala of Tayammum, for example. Mazari seems to go to the fact that Tayammum actually does Raf'ul Hadath. And this is what Al-Qarafi also supports, and he presents other opinions from the school, from the ulama of Al-Malikiyah supporting that view. But the point is that is seen as a shadh view within the madhab. That tayammum actually removes, and not only does it suspend, but actually removes the state of impurity. And it's the view that Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi seems to support passionately in his qabas. And he says this is the madhab of Imam Malik. It is the view that Imam Malik has presented in the Muwatta. I'm not trying to support the view. I'm not trying to argue this view. I'm just trying to show how the ulama have discussed masail and argued. So this brings us back to the lack of actual clarity, first of all, on how the Mashour emerged several centuries later. Secondly, what does it actually mean, the Mashour? Was it just a political stance in order to, for example, systematize the statutory law within that state, like Al-Andalus, so everybody seems to be ruling off one plate, if you like, of one book, of one set of fatwa? Was that the methodology? Was that the wisdom behind the Mashour? Or was it these other things? For example, was it actually to present the madhab in much more of a neat manner to people, make it more presentable? So I mean, with all of these things, and people do present, and I know people will say that the likes of sometimes Imam Shatibi and Abu Ishaq al-Shatibi, but he also is perhaps Allahu A'lam understood. I mean, I have actually studied his muwafaqat, and the thing is, if you read through his fatwa, although in one place he does say that a person should not be giving rulings other than the Mashour, he does say that, but yet if you read in his section of ijtihad and taqleed and tarjih, he says that it is not permissible for a person to be just taking blindly following certain opinions. He says that although the lay person is blind in terms of doing full ijtihad, he says that it is an obligation upon him to do tarjih between the different opinions of the mujtahideen. So although he is saying that people should not be just be blindly following, at the same time they should be following the madhab, but they should be doing tarjih between the aqwal. That's what he presents. He also presents in his fatwa, which can be checked up, when he's asked about can 3 talaqs actually equal 1, his fatwa to that is actually, well, if the urf where you live happens to go with that, then that's fine. So I mean, we have to really question what is Abu Ishaq al-Shatibi actually saying. So I mean, you can take a little extract here, but you have to put it into context, because when we read his section on tarjih, he seems to be disagreeing totally with somebody just following something, even if it goes against the evidence. So I mean, with this being said, one thing we do understand is that there is a huge amount of diversity within the madhab. The Maliki madhab has been a school which has honoured its dissents. In this way, it has differed from other schools, especially like the school of the Hanafiya, for example, who have had a very rigid, systematized presentation of the Mashour and the Mufta bihi. So, for example, Qasim ibn Qutlubagha will completely, almost push aside the opinions of his Sheikh Ibn Kamaluddin ibn Hammam, and will say tafarrudatu Sheikhi la tu'tabar. He will say this, that we do not accept the individual dissents of our Sheikh, but of his Sheikh. Whereas in the Maliki method, that's not the case. Anybody who studied the books of the Maliki Fatawa will see that there is that the dissents of the ulama have been considered as opinions within the madh'hab, and they have said that this is the madh'hab according to the Iraqiyin, this has been the madh'hab of the Tunisiyin sometimes, or the Andalusiyin, and so on and so forth, or this person has had this qawl within the madh'hab, or this person, and so on and so forth. It has been a madh'hab that has respected the dissents and the diversity. It has honoured this scholastic and ilmi tradition which has reached it. So I mean, that is my understanding, that we should actually not only appreciate but celebrate the richness of the madh'hab of the people of Medina. I do accept once again that people will and may disagree with what I have said, and that is my understanding. If anybody wishes to have further clarity, I mean, there has been a lot written on this. I know in modern day, I mean in our times, we've had a book by Dr. Qutb Raisuni, who's also written on the topic. He's presented a lot of this research in detail as well. So I mean, that's available. It's called At-Ta'arud Bayna Rajih wal Mashour, that the conflict between the Rajih and the Mashour within the madhab of Imam Malik. And other people have written on this topic as well. If anybody would like to ask me, they're more than welcome to inbox me on Facebook. Inshallah, I will attempt to get back to them. Jazakumullah khair once again for listening. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teach us all from His knowledge. May He enlighten us to appreciate the ilm and the richness of these sciences that have reached us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the tawfiq to respect and honor each other in our differences. Wa jazakumullah khair for listening. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.